Hello you guys and welcome to the channel. If you're new, don't be.
I'm Whitney. Keep it cute, get the boot.
What up, you guys? Welcome to the channel. If you're new, don't be. Go ahead and click that subscribe button to be a part of the Witness gang, to join the Witness Nation. Now let's get into this, shall we?
Say my name, I'll make them nervous.
All right, you guys, welcome back to another installation of KoolAid Convos, okay, with your girl Whitney D, okay? And this is where I take in-depth conversations with, regular people, celebrities. But today I like to say I have a close celebrity, okay? Jerry is one of the most, oh my gosh, supportive subscribers, if you will, and he had an amazing experience that we're going to talk about in depth here on KoolAid Convos. Okay, now if you guys remember, I did a reaction video about a week or two ago by thanks of my husband, Chad, because I ain't looking for no reaction videos. Okay, I shared my experience of when I was a youth, how I had my own experience in heaven. Well, what I thought was heaven or the garden or what have you of Eden, because I remember, for those that didn't get the opportunity to see it, I remember being young. I was little and I had like what appeared to me being an outer body experience, and I found myself like flying over what looked as though to be like a jungle, what looked to be like just the colors were coloring, baby, like the greens were green, everything was beautiful, and I didn't want to leave. And I remember coming back into myself and literally falling out the bed. I was out the bed and I had a lot of, I want to say now, out of body experience, now that I think back at it, because I would see myself flying over, and I'm in Dallas, I'm in Texas, and I was little and I would fly over the city. Like, I kid you not. And then I will come back to myself and I'll be on the floor. You know, maybe I was just dreaming. I don't know. But not for nothing, you guys. I'm excited to introduce you guys to Jerry and you guys be able to hear his story. So join me for another installation of KoolAid Convos.
So what is an OBE? People experience them differently, but it's often where a person feels like they've left their body. This often occurs while sleeping, so they'll get the sense of floating above their bed and able to walk around or look at their body, on the outside, looking at themselves. In rare instances, they appear far, far away from their bodies in other countries or even other planets. The idea of out-of-body experiences is an ancient one across many different religions and belief sets. What differs is what exactly causes these experiences. Some OBEs can be induced, usually by forcing something upon the body. For example, some hallucinogenic drugs can cause OBEs, such as LSD. When this happens, it's not typically traveling far from your body, but rather losing the senses of your body. If you no longer hear or feel or smell, for example, you might feel like your vision is alone, floating, unattached. This mimics an out-of-body experience, but likely isn't one. Without drugs, there are meditative ways to induce an OBE, such as going into a deep trance and trying to let go of the world around you. There are always ways to mechanically induce, which includes a variety of methods in which you are stimulated in different areas of the brain, or even deprived of certain senses. The studies that we'll next discuss use a variety of these methods to try to force the mind to trigger an out-of-body experience. Now, as we dive into these theories and studies, you'll notice a drastic spectrum of what people believe. Some believe it's outright paranormal. A lot of researchers come to the conclusion that OBEs are just one's imagination. When I talked about hallucinogenic triggers, these are not true OBEs, but rather they feel like them. Some researchers say these are equivalent to dreams, where the person just feels like they're outside their body. Other researchers believe that OBEs are defense mechanisms. Your life is in danger, so your mind tries to protect itself by trying to leave the body. You experience an intense emotional pain, so you leave that pain behind. These are intense and hard to replicate factors and are therefore hard to prove as a stimulant. In the timeline of research on OBEs, you'll notice a shift from a focus on the paranormal to a much more scientific understanding. The research done since the 2000s has almost unanimously pointed to a mismatch of brain processing, where vision is hyperactive but sense of touch is diminished, leading you to feel like you're floating outside of your physical body. Let's get into some specific studies. One of the most documented and now controversial studies is about an anonymous woman called Miss Z, who reported that she could leave her body and float at the ceiling during the night. Researcher Charles Tart put a shelf above her bed and put a 5-digit code on that shelf that she could only read from above. On the 4th night of testing, she was able to recite the code. However, this was the 60s and there weren't the sort of controls that we'd now expect, so we don't have any video proof, for example. She could have left the bed and peeked. There's a lot of ways that this study failed. Another controversial study in 1977 had a woman in a hospital claim to see a sneaker sitting on a ledge outside the building, and it was published as proof of out-of-body experiences. Nearly 20 years later, the exact location was replicated and it was discovered that people outside the hospital could see the shoe. So the patient might have heard people talking about it, then worked it into her out-of-body experience story. As the more modern age of research came upon us, more and more of these situational types of research proved false. They replicated hiding things from a sleeping person to no success. There have been studies of objects in other rooms to no success. More neurological studies have been done and have seen more success, though it's how the person feels. They lose the sensory feeling of lying in bed, but visually feel awake, therefore feel floating and disattached from their body.
All right. Hi, Jerry.
Hello, Whitney.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. About yourself?
Amazing. I'm good. I'm excited for this particular topic. I'm all into God's spirituality, as you may already know.
Me too. Definitely. I'm also into spirituality. I'm an ordained deacon and also an ordained minister. So go ahead. You have a question?
Well, let's go ahead and get into who you are. Who is Jerry? Because for those that are on my channel, they're probably like, okay, who is this guy? So where did you grow up? And let's get into that first, introducing yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up on the northeast side of Ohio, around the Akron area. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
No.
Yeah. I grew up, my mom was bipolar and my dad was an alcoholic. So I had a really tough childhood. I just had a lot of bad, abuse and things like that. I mean, one thing just sticks out the most is when I was like kindergarten age. My mom, I walked past her and she took her fingernails and dug it into my skull. And I thought I did something wrong. And she said, no, you didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted you to know what it was like when Jesus had the crown of thorns put on his head. So this is a type of...
Just out of nowhere, though.
Yeah, well, she's bipolar and she's untreated. She wasn't on medication or anything like that. Basically, I tried to struggle through life. I was picked on a lot. I was sickly, and things like that. And then after I graduated, high school, I was looking to start my life and everything. Got in a toxic relationship. And I ended up getting, you see the colitis or what they call spastic colon. And it got to the point where the doctor said, eventually we're going to take some of your colon out and we're going to have to give you a colostomy. I mean, that's how serious this got. And then there was a lady that came to the town and her name was Barbara O'Malley. And she said she claimed she had the gift of healing. And so I thought, what do I got to lose? And what happens is she was laying her hands. I mean, she'd barely touch people. She didn't hit with a whole hand. She would touch with a finger. These people were, on the ground being caught. And I could remember me thinking I'm being all smug and say, well, I'm going to go up there, but that's not going to happen to me. You know what I mean? so what happens is I took accountability for what was going on. I said I wasn't living my life right, and I said, and in turn, I got this disease, and it's my fault. And she just touched me, and it was lights out. And I got to experience heaven. I got to talk to God. And
in that moment,
I was unconscious for like 15 minutes. I mean, you know, I laid there on the ground for 15 minutes.
wow.
Yeah.
So let's please get into your experience.
Well, the first thing I did was I felt being ashamed to be in heaven with God. And I even said, you know, why me? Why would you take the time to do, you know, spend, you know, do this with me? And you know what he told me? He told me, he says, because when everybody else tells me no, you say yes. And what God was referring to is I'm the type of person I like to help people. If somebody needs something, I like helping. And that's what God was referring to. And in fact, this is going to get really heavy. You know, let me go back to the heaven part. So we talked for a while, and he told me that, you know, it's time to go back. And I said, I don't want to go back. And he
Can you
grabbed
describe like what you saw while you were there, or were you just?
Well, one thing I didn't look at him. I was too.
The glory,
you know,
was too, yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't look at him. And so, but when when I came back to my body, like I said, when I was there, it was pretty much like you see with, you know, flowers and, you know, like, you know, Garden of Eden.
Oh,
Yeah. And I can't remember everything that he said to me.
right.
But really, what happened was years later after that, I got married, and I was you know, I had 2 sons. And one day, a neighbor, she, you know, it was like 11:30 at night. And I was, my first wife died of cancer. And this is during the time I was married to her. So what happens is the neighbor, her name was Jamie. We had conversations before, and she told me the one time, she says, I'd really like to get custody of my son back. And I said, well, why don't you have custody? And she says, well, I'm addicted to meth. And I told her, I said, I was a raging alcoholic for a while. And I said, God touched my life and healed me from that. And now I don't have the desire to do that. Well, going back to that time period, it's 11:30 at night, summer day. And she was going to walk from our town to the next town to help out a friend. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, I looked at my wife and I'm like, that's not a good idea. I mean, a lady walking by herself from one town to the other, 11:30 at night. So I asked my wife, I said to her, you know, it's okay, I take her to pick this guy up and bring him back. And my wife said, sure, you know, I trust you. I know there's, you know, nothing funny going to go on. So I take her to the next town and we pick this guy up. And he says, hey, can we stop on 10th Street? And I said, yeah, you know, he says, I just want to, you know, the guy owes me $10. So we pull up in the driveway, and these 2 guys walk up to the car. And then he said, you know, he says to me, or he says to the guy, he says, hey, you know, can you give me that $10 that you owe me? And the guy says, what $10? I don't owe you $10. What are you talking about? And the other guy pulls out a 9mm gun and puts it to our foreheads. He said, you ever see one of these? And I mean, I just figured, you know, I'm going to be in the paper tomorrow that, you know, man shot in driveway, you know. And so what I did was I prayed. I said, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to come back to heaven. I said, but the only thing I ask is please make sure my wife and kids are taken care of. And by that time, the one guy's mother comes on to my side of the car. And she was, I mean, her eyes were all glassy and bloodshot. I mean, she was high on something. And she gets in my face and says, who are you? You know? And I said, my name is Jerry. And she goes, what? I'm like, well, here comes the bullets. And I didn't know what to say, and I'm not kidding you. I heard the voice of God say, tell her a joke. I'm like, what? Tell her a joke?
Fine timing.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm like, I can't, I know I'm not losing my mind because I've had a relationship with a guy and I knew it wasn't a hallucination or whatever. And throughout my life, I like being a comedian. I was class clown. I was on a local TV station doing a little like advertisements and shows on there. And what happens is I look at her and I said, my name's Jerry, like in Tom and Jerry, and I'm the mouse. And she just she just acted like a hitter in the face of water. And she points to the guy with a gun and she tells him to get out. And the other guy goes off on him. He says, what are you doing with that gun? Put that gun away. You crazy, man? You get out of here. He turns around and that same guy, not the guy on the left, but the guy on the left, he reaches in his back pocket, pulls out a wallet and gives the guy $10 and says, drive home safe. Now, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jerry, like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And this was after your encounter and your experience in heaven.
Yeah, that was years, about roughly about 8 years after that, that experience. And then, God really kind of prepared me. See, like my first wife, she was a survivor of abuse. I mean, I've got to be careful because I know, YouTube's kind of, but she was abused, if you know what I mean. Okay. And what happened was she comfort ate, and she was up to like 500 pounds. Okay. And it got to, so what happens is her health was really suffering, and she ended up getting cancer because it threw her into, there's like a sarcoma 29. It's rare, but it's 100% fatal, and it's never caught in time, and nobody survives it. And it was really tough. I mean, all I would do is I'd go to work, go to the hospital, take care of her, and then come home and go to bed and start the thing all over again. So what happened was when she passed away, I lost everything. I mean, I lost the house. My ex-mother-in-law, she told my sons I was preventing her from going to the hospital, getting medical help. So her death was my fault. So I lost my sons. I lost my job. I was homeless. And what happened was I bumped into one of the nurses that took care of Chris. And I said, she said to me, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I want to ask you a question. And I said, okay, shoot, And she says, how can you love God after all this? How can you still love God after losing everything? And I looked at her and I said, God didn't spare his only son pain, suffering, and death. Who am I to go to God and say that I am better than your son?
Yes.
And tears started coming down on her face. I'm like, what's the matter? She says, you don't know how bad I needed to hear that.
Wow.
She said, I've had 2 daughters that passed away, and I've hated God for 10 years. And she says, now you put it back in perspective. I'm gonna start a relationship with God again. So even though, like the Bible says, everything comes together, that those who earnestly seek the Lord, and then turns, bad into good. Something that really bad happened to me, God turned it into good to bring somebody back to him. And so then basically, it was about a year later, I met Wanda, my second wife, and it was like God restored everything. I mean, she had 2 children from a previous marriage, a son and a daughter, and and what happens is I end up with I started getting health problems too because I was really stretching myself too thin. So I end up getting disability, And so then, I mean, everything that was taken from me got restored again. You know, it's just like, you know, the book of Job the prophet.
Absolutely.
And you know, same thing. He restored everything that was taken away from me.
Double for your trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So have you had any encounters since that experience of heaven since then?
Out of body, no, I haven't. I mean, you know, that was the only time. But you know, I've just seen
Mhm.
miracles happen, you know, here and there, and you know,
Right.
just keep up faith, and you know, because I remember the church I was going to, they wanted to build this um, education center onto the church, and it was going to cost $2.3 million to do this. And I was a deacon at the time there, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to get to pay this at. And we were praying and everything, and I went to the pastor and I said, maybe we need to purchase like Nehemiah did. And he says, what do you mean? He says, well, she went to God and say, if you give me a son, I just want him for 8 years, and then after that you can have him the rest of your
Mhm.
life. And he turned out to
Yeah.
be, correctly, turns out to be Samuel the prophet. And so then, and I said, what happens is when we do these, the fundraising, I feel we need to tithe that and give it to another church and help them improve their place too. And then all of a sudden, everything started falling into place. We started getting donations and things like that. Um, I was starting, I got in corporate with a ministry that helps people with food and everything. And what they do is they would, people would get a whole box of different cuts of meat and things like that. And what happens is some go to the church, and then the rest would go to them. And then the rest, you know, we got, you know, we got loans for that education center got built. And so that was, you know, that was a miracle because we really didn't have anything to work with at the time, you know,
Right.
at the time. So, um, but like I said, just like things like that, you know, happen all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I just, like I said, when people need help, I don't turn anybody away.
Right. Because it's your heart. You have um, a God-given heart, literally. And,
Mm,
your heart reminds me of mine because for
mm,
years, ever since I was little, and I see it now, we see um, traits and things that we pass off to our children, some good, some bad. But
mhm,
as I look at my daughter, I notice just her heart and her spirit and her sweetness. The girl is just amazing. And then I have conversations with my mom because I'm just like, was I like that? Did I do that? And I just remember the same, just always trying to give. And I mean, literally, I will, take dolls and things to school and be like, you want this? You want this? Um, it would always come off as if like I'm trying to buy people, but I was just giving. I
mhm,
remember growing up and I would be the type that if I saw an animal dead in the street or something, I'm just like, like it's just, and for years, because I say all that to say for years, I hated that heart because I got hurt a lot, you know,
mhm,
and I'm still battling with that, boundaries and
mhm,
my self-worth and knowing that what I deem to be important and what I want is just that, and
mhm,
learning to put myself first in a lot of cases because my heart is so big and forgiving and you do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times to me, because I'm just like, oh, okay, let's just talk. It's okay. It's okay. And for years, I hated that because I
mhm.
see people through God's lens, if you will. I don't know if you heard of that
Exactly.
song, but yeah, and I see
Mhm,
people the way God intends them to be, if that makes sense. Like they're not possibly
mhm,
there yet, but I see the potential. And I speak on how I met my husband, and and he was ashamed and embarrassed because he was down on his luck. And
Mhm.
when we were dating, when I met him, he was literally on the floor of one of his best friend's house. And I used to always complain about not being able to be invited up. And why isn't he? I'm like, he must live with a girl, like, and
Mhm.
he was just embarrassed of his living circumstances and situations. And I wasn't. Like, it was just like, you're not going to be here long, and he
Mhm.
wasn't. And then like a few months later, after we got our own place, I lost my job. And, since then, like, he's been like the breadwinner of the home. I'll periodically go in and out of getting a job if necessary, but for the most part, it's been him. And,
Mhm.
I have to remind him sometimes of sitting back and taking everything in, because we can miss out on life when we're just steady, just going, but
True.
I remember that experience to this day, of that outer body experience. So I believe you. That's beautiful. And I'm with you. I used to see those prophetess, if you will, come
Mhm.
to church and they have that line. I'm just like, oh, child. Like, what are you doing? It's not that serious, not that deep, and they don't feel nothing. And baby, okay, now that's not gonna be everybody's experience,
Right.
but because I wasn't touched or anything whenever I got it. I was just dreaming.
Mhm.
And and I mean, like I said, I still to this day, and actually I've had, like I said, several. I had another one when I lost my son. I was 16 and
Oh.
pregnant. Yeah, and he was stillborn, but I had to still have him.
Mhm.
And I was getting pumped with all these different drugs and stuff to induce labor and stuff, and I found myself just looking over myself, and seeing everything. And yeah, so those experiences are extremely real.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm just happy that you were able to go through that experience, God, and change your life completely, you
Well,
know?
well, here's a story about forgiveness.
Please
My
do
mother,
share.
she had a stroke, and it took out her whole left side of her body. And so I went and visited her at the hospital. Eventually, we had to move her to a rest home, and she had like another mini one, and so it took her speech out altogether. And and then when I went to the rest home, they said, "Well, it's okay you come visit your mom, but she's a vegetable. She don't even know you're there."
Oh,
And that's what they told me. And
wow.
so then I said, I got to find out for myself. So I went in her room and I looked in her eyes, and tears started, you know,
Oh my
flowing.
God.
I knew she was there. And, and what happened was I got a flashback of all those times she abused me. And the thing of it is that, I mean, realized I'm the only one that knew that she was still in there, you know, and I could have got revenge, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And, it wasn't her fault. You know, I didn't agree with her that she didn't, get treated for it. And then the ironic thing is, I would just come to the hospital and we would play 20 questions. I turned the TV on at certain channels, and she blinked, twice for yes and once for no. I would adjust her because she was getting sore. She's getting bed sores. So I'd go every day to, the adjuster. And then finally, what happened was is she had a respiratory arrest and she passed away. And what's ironic about it is 2 years later, I found out that I'm bipolar.
Really?
Yes.
What were the signs? Like,
Uh, what happens is I was treated for depression and stuff like that because all the deaths, I experienced and things like that. And nobody really, they didn't find it, they didn't see it. But one day, believe it or not, I was watching Law and Order one day, and here the one detective, his mother was bipolar,
mhm.
and she was saying things just like me. Well, if somebody wanted to got in my way, I could have been more successful, and I deserve better than what I've been getting through my life. And I mean, and she was just like, I mean, like they actually knew me, and they had a woman portray somebody that was bipolar.
Wow.
And so I went to my counselor, and I said, I think I am. So he gave me a test, asked me these bunch of questions, and I ended up being type 2 bipolar. But the difference is I am medicated. I take my medicine every day. I'm being treated for it. And it explained a lot of things, because I wouldn't have like long-term friendships. And I wondered why all of a sudden we weren't friends anymore. But because what happened was I probably said or did something that offended them, and I didn't realize it. Because sometimes, like when you go through the phases,
Mm-hmm.
you literally get amnesia. You don't remember anything about it. And you're like, why is this person mad at me? What did I do? And
Wow. I would
so
love to bring you back to go in more depth with that, Jerry. Because,
oh yeah. In fact, I'm
oh
going to
my
give some good
gosh, because
advice.
that's,
I'm going to give some good advice to people. What happens is, if you have somebody that's bipolar or even schizophrenic, here's the key. What you got to do is, once they're medicated, have them sit down and write themselves a letter. Say, like for instance, me, this is Jerry. I'm writing to myself to let you know I'm feeling really good right now, and I'm taking my medicine, and and this is to remind me to take my medicine every day. And then I would sign it. And that's what everybody else should do. Because what happens is when you get bad, you don't listen to people. You actually withdraw into yourselves, and you won't listen to anybody. If someone take your medicine, oh, I don't need to do that or whatever. But see, what you can't do is lie to yourself when you're in that state. When you see that, like you put it up on your dresser or something where you see it every day. And what that does is that keeps you taking your medication. Because see, so many people has, they don't know this, and they keep on going through that cycle. If they survive a suicide attempt or whatever, it happens all over again. It's just like a never-ending, loop, unless you break that cycle. Yeah. And that was one way I found out that's how you break the cycle. See, you trust that letter when you don't trust anybody else. So if you know anybody that's bipolar or schizophrenic, and that's another thing too, is I've been helping people. A lot of these people at Panhandle, believe it or not, by 80 to 85% of them are actually mental patients that fell through the cracks. They get them, they get them stable and everything. They send them out in the world. Well, then they stop taking their medicine. So what happens? They lose their job, then they lose their house or apartment, and then they end up on the street again. It's just a vicious cycle. And every once in a while I have extra money. I let them, and I don't judge people. I'm like, now, is this the 15% that's okay? That's fake, or I just leave it up to God.
Right.
I just, let him worry about it, because let him take care of it.
So what are some signs that one could look for if they believe that they have a spouse, a relative, or friend that may be bipolar?
You'll go through phases like they call manic phases. What happens is you do have like mood swings. You'll be really happy at one moment, and hours later, you'll be extremely mad or extremely sad, and you just keep on going through that. And then you go through periods where you'll cut down on your sleep, or you'll sleep more than usual for days. Anywhere between 3 days to a week. Me, how they determined that I was type 2 is my cycle was every 3 days. People that's type 1 have a 7-day cycle. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, they just have this feeling of, I got to be in control of everything, because, the world's going to, just fall apart if it isn't for me. And then, of course, that irritates people, because you might not, what you're doing might not be the right thing to do with somebody, but you can't see that because you're blinded from that.
So would you say that your bipolar condition was hereditary? by
Oh
way of your
yes.
mother?
Oh yes. I've been talking to different people. Yeah, it can be. It can. Like me, it was one generation after the other, but sometimes you can skip a generation also too. Yeah, that's it's unfortunate, but that's what happens sometimes.
Generational.
Yep, generational. But I think God gave me He did everything in the right time, and I tell you what, really, Wanda, my wife, she's really a godsend, big time, because what happened, she put up with a lot of that for the first let me see how many years, been about 5 years, and then that's when I got diagnosed. So she put up a lot of my mess. I mean, there's times she wanted to smack me to sleep and dare me to snore. You know what I mean? But
Right.
but she's a phenomenal. I mean, she's definitely a blessing from God.
Absolutely. And I mean, God will place the angels around us that we need to, endure, So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, thank you for trusting me with your story. Thank you for telling it and being so transparent. I want to ask a final question before we wrap everything up. How did you find little old Whitney D TV, and how long have you been a subscriber, if I don't ask?
Oh,
Might ask.
well, it's my wife. My wife and I, we watched TV together. In fact, what we did is we got a Roku and a Fire Stick.
Uh-huh.
And what happens is we see you on the big screen TV. We got a great big flat screen TV, and if you get tired of looking at your computer screen, or you get tired of your phone, looking at that all the time, all you got to do is, they're not very expensive. They're like $40, and they
Right.
come with YouTube on them, and you just subscribe to it. And like I said, yeah, we see you as large as life every day.
And loud too as life child.
Yep.
Lord.
But I think what happened was, I don't know how we got, because there's that algorithm that works with YouTube, and what happened was, I think we found the R. Kelly story, and I think that's how I'm pretty sure that's how we found you.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Absolutely. I do remember. And you guys were my first blessing,
Mm.
of support. And it was just amazing. I was like, oh my God, somebody likes me like that. And you guys are just such a blessing. And I'm so appreciative. And I mean, I'm still going, full steam ahead. I'm doing a due diligence of just trying to make sure that I maintain this channel of integrity, and just love and wisdom, to the best of my ability. So again, I want to thank you, Jerry, and Miss Wanda. I love you. Thank you, girl.
And also, if anybody, like I said, if they have questions, or any way that I could help them somehow, feel free to forward their information, and I'd be glad to talk to them.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, thank you so very much. Any last topic or discussion or anything you would like to say before we wrap this up?
Oh, one other thing I want to say is, with all those experiences, though, one of the best gifts that God gave me is I don't have fear of death anymore.
Amen.
And it makes it a lot easier to do ministry, because you get threatened out there when you do ministry, and just like I said, I can do it with ease, because like I said, when I had that gun pointed at my head, I thought I was dead for sure.
Right.
But God said, nope, I got some more use for you. So
Absolutely, he does. Absolutely. And, God bless you. And keep forward and keep in obedience, because obedience is greater than sacrifice. Thank you for
amen.
sharing your story and allowing me the opportunity to be able to let it reach a broader audience. Thank you so very much. I'm honored to have you be a part of the Witness Nation. Thank you so very much, Jerry.
Mother, I feel the same way.
Thank you so much. Well, I will see you later, Jerry.
Yes. Well, we'll see you on the big screen. I'm Jerry Grimes, and you're tuned in to KoolAid and Convos.
Whew. All right, you guys, that is the video. Oh my God. Like, I love stuff like that. I love talking about the goodness and grace and mercy of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And not only that, I love hearing your stories. And if you have a story of that caliber, or you just want to speak about his goodness, or just, talk about something that, is, impactful. This is what KoolAid and Convos is for. It's not just the whole gossip or what have you, but it's impactful. And if you trust me to be able to get the word out or get something that you are passionate about, and it lines up with what I stand for here on Whitney D TV, feel free to send me your story at reviewswithWhitneyD@gmail.com. Make sure the subject line states KoolAid and Convos, and I will return your email. Thank you guys so very much. This has been another episode of KoolAid and Convos with Whitney D, featuring Jerry Grimes. I will see you on the next one. Deuces.
Say my name, I make them nervous.